Good afternoon. Okay, we're on. Good afternoon, everybody. I am very happy to be able to moderate this important session. I know there've been so many questions from the Trinational, what's going on here, and the Trinational Coalition in Defense of Public Education has always been about solidarity and supporting each other's struggles, because we know this is a global struggle. We know there's a right-wing attack on all through the world, and especially on children and educators. And what's really important here is we've had a ton of letters of support come from different people from Canada and Mexico to the Chicago Teachers Union. When David Huerta was arrested here in Los Angeles, the head of SEIU at the state level, we had letters both from Canada and Mexico and other countries in Latin America on his support, which I shared with him, and he thanks us graciously for that. And his case is still going on. And so opening it up today, we are going to start talking about what's going on. As we speak, ICE has been sent to San Francisco area. The San Francisco Chronicle just printed that because of pressure from the tech, or what we call the fascist tech folks, on Trump, he might not go into San Francisco, but ICE is based on the Coast Guard island on Alameda, which is across the bridge in San Francisco, and they have been attacking the protesters that have them quartered on the island so they can't get off. They've been using flashbang grenades and pepper spray. So it's a standoff there right now. And I'm going to turn to Lupe first, Guadalupe Carrasco. We also were hoping Ron could join us, Goches. They're both from UTLA and very active in creating the community self-defense coalitions. And they have a press conference because someone was shot 2 days ago outside of Santee High School, where Ron teaches. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Lupe.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lupe Carrasco Cardona, and I'm actually driving right now. I'm about to stop at a safe place, but I'm a member of Unión del Barrio. I'm on the Central Committee, and I represent La Mujer, and I'm the chair of the Association of Raza Educators Los Angeles. So those are two volunteer-based grassroots organizations that I belong to, in addition to my union, United Teachers Los Angeles. And so we have been at the forefront of what has been happening here in LA because our organizations have consistently been working on behalf of, self-determination of our peoples that find themselves here in Mexico ocupado, right, occupied Mexico. And so the Association of Raza Educators was actually founded in a very similar political time here in California in 1994, right when Proposition 187 was on the ballot and ultimately passed. Pieces of it were deemed unconstitutional, but nevertheless, it was apparent that there was an anti-raza, anti-Latino, anti-Mexican sentiment, anti-immigrant sentiment already here in California. And so what happened were educators like myself, who are very much dedicated to anti-oppression and teaching truth and social justice, were upset about the lack of response from our schools and from our unions on how they were responding to the needs of our students. And so we find ourselves in this new era, this revamped national effort, which is very similar. And back in November, when it was apparent that these attacks were coming, we actually put a call out because we knew that our organization was not going to be sufficient to be able to fight back what was happening, with the promised ICE raids that they were, the ICE terror that they were threatening us with. So we called for a coalition of organizations throughout LA County. And to our surprise, we were very pleased that about 70 organizations and thousands of individuals have come forth and said, we want to organize in defense of our communities. So what the world has seen happening in LA and now in places like Chicago and the Bay Area, and in other places across the country, Portland, Oregon, for instance, we were prepared for it here in LA. So beginning at the end of November, we were already organizing and doing trainings about the things that we understood about how La Migra operates, what to look for, what our constitutional rights are, and how we can not just know our rights, but organize to defend them. And so that was honestly quite beautiful because even though the world saw the ICE raids in LA more around like June, the truth is that beginning in about the end of January and definitely into the beginnings of February, we already were receiving multiple ICE raids across the city of Los Angeles. And so what we were doing is that we were prepared organization by organization from different parts, because as you all know, Los Angeles is very big, it's vast. So we have organizations that concentrate in different parts of LA, and we would do two things. One of them would be what we call like patrolling early in the morning, because at first we were seeing that La Migra was staging at various locations, and so that we would be able to kind of blow the cover and they wouldn't be able to do the operation they had planned. The other thing that we're doing is other types of patrols or receiving phone calls and then sending people to the areas where raids were happening to document and to just do, like honestly, to be as loud as possible to remind people that they're not alone and to defend their rights. Because it's a lot of times it's fear that causes people to say things that they shouldn't say. We were very successful in that, which is how we started to see the ramping up, where they would go from like knocking on doors or trying to talk to people to then snatch and grab, right? Where they literally are just grabbing. You don't even know what's going on. You're before you know it, your hands are zip tied and your feet are up and you're in a vehicle. So we started to see that, and then and that's actually what caused not just the organizations, but now the masses, the people, to come out in defense of their neighbors, of their parents. And I think that that's a lot of what we see that is missing from the narrative. Sometimes you'll see on the news, like in June, right before the National Guard got here, a very well documented resistance that happened in Paramount here in like South Central or South Los Angeles. It was a 8-hour standoff and nobody was taken that day. And there's a lot of media coverage, a lot of social media coverage, but what was lost in the narrative was that the people who were in a factory right there, who locked themselves in, were calling their families, their children, and were scared. And it was their children and their friends and the neighbors that came out in defense. So it was that day, it wasn't just about like, a kind of random uprising. Although many people were there because it's the right thing to do to defend the community, it was also because it was literally their parents who were there and scared. And so that was in June. And then, as you all know, there was a temporary restraining order that was put in place, but also missing from the narrative is that the raids never stopped. They just weren't as widespread as they were in the month of June. And so what we saw were, instead of hitting LA, the city proper, it was more county. And as you know, you can drive, very closely out of downtown LA and already hit many other cities that feel like LA, but are technically not LA. And so we saw a lot of raids happening there. So that's kind of more of the community self-defense organizing that we've done. But myself as an educator and Ron Goches as an educator and many of us in our organization that are teachers, we also saw the need to start organizing our teachers because a great deal of the time they're with us, during the day. And so with that, making sure our students are informed and also our parents and local businesses, bus drivers, and then ensuring that our administrators were also trained on what they can do. And so without exaggeration, our organization via Zoom and in person, we did trainings to thousands throughout the United States. And I think because of that, there have been, we've pushed our district, which is I believe the second or third largest district in the country, to actually say that administrators have the right to lock schools down if there's ICE. And that takes me to the last thing that I want to share today, and that is that on Tuesday, we had an incident in front of a high school in South Central, very close to where I teach, and where some of my fellow Unión del Barrio compas work and teach. There was a shooting that happened of a community journalist, a TikToker, they call him, who was there reporting on the actual staging of ICE that was happening right next to a very large urban school in a very densely populated area of South Central, historic South Central. And so he was shot, and another person that was, I guess, what you call friendly fire, shooting happened. And so the school went on lockdown for 55 minutes, which is something that is very common, right? When there's a shooting or some type of activity outside. But as soon as the shooting situation was cleared and, the school was told and assured that there would be no more shooting, the administrator released the lockdown, despite the fact that there were many ICE agents on the sidewalk right in front of the school. And so that was causing outrage because the students are by and large Black and brown students at that school, and the teachers by and large are teachers of color, and there are documented educators at that school who are feeling very scared in these times. And when the administrator was ushered to please not release the lockdown, her response to the teachers was, "You don't pay my mortgage," which caused like an even larger uproar. And so right now, the Community Self-Defense Coalition, the Association of Raza Educators, Unión del Barrio, and other allied organizations are calling for LA Unified to not just give administrators the leeway to do a lockdown if they so choose, but to actually give stronger guidance to ensure that there is a lockdown when there is ICE presence so close to students and their parents and community members.
Thank you, Lupe. I also would add that the training that was done at UTLA by this collective was amazing. How working with getting students to school, working with parents, the one member calls it the walking school bus, where people go in a group. And those trainings have been done at UTLA and other unions and communities throughout California and beyond.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And one question would be what kind of solidarity from labor and social organizations in other regions or countries would be most useful at this point?
I mean, honestly, I feel like the more that we all sort of organize and use similar strategies, the stronger our communities will be, and then also the more protection there will be for each of us as union members and siblings. So, for instance, one of the things that we started evolving to do is using our union structures to organize. So like in at UTLA, we do a thing called a CAT team, you know, a chapter action team. So that's a team that is like within our site. We're organized around bargaining, but we're also using that as a thread to be informed about ICE. And then we have clusters of schools. So we're also communicating with our clusters of schools, because if ICE is at one school, all the schools in our cluster are also at risk. And then taking those sort of concentric circles wider and wider and wider, and organizing in that way. So we're from the national to the local, and then even smaller, like at the school site level, and then all the way back up. I think is going to be of utmost importance in terms of being effective to combat what this administration is doing. And then in terms of like our siblings that are in Canada and in Mexico, I think that the intercambio, like an exchange of ideas on things, organizing ideas that have worked in those countries, or and vice versa, going the multiple ways, I think is going to be also imperative as well. I know that when I have been to meeting the members of like La Cente in Mexico, like really seeing how advanced pedagogically, a lot of the educators there are, is like really important. And I think that here in the United States, there's a tendency for educators to not necessarily see themselves as the workers. And I think that identity is going to be very important, because we are part of the workforce that is also part of building this country. And right now, with the attacks on teaching truth, the attacks on ethnic studies, on critical race theory, academic freedom, a lot of censorship that's happening, I really would like my siblings here in the US to have that consciousness that I've seen in Mexico, for instance, with educators.
Thank you so much. And also, our Trinational last year in San Antonio heard about the doxing and stuff that was going on against teachers in LA. And some of you actually had legal cases against you. So we sent a letter to the superintendent of LA Unified.
Oh, wow.
Out for it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So do we have time for questions, or should we just go to the next speaker? Because I know Lupe's got to get to the press conference. And I don't know.
I could take another question if folks are wanting a question, wanting to ask.
So let me see what. I can't see everybody. Let me get are there any questions? I don't see any hands raised.
Well, thank you, everyone. If you do end up having questions, I'm happy to respond, and I hope to meet you all.
All right.
In person.
All right.
I do have a question, if
Okay.
we still got time. I'm curious about what impact in terms of like attendance at schools, the sort of fear of being picked up by ICE has had in the public schools in LA.
That's a great question. And beginning around the end of January, February of this year, last school year, we already had seen a decline in attendance. Not terrible, but definitely noticeable decline in attendance. And then, because the end of the year, June, during graduations and all of that, that's when the uptick in the attacks happened. So a lot of students were kind of like in the COVID situation. They were having cabin fever, stuck at home. You know, parents were sharing that they didn't go to the pool, the library, to the beach, all the things that they normally do with their kids in the summer. They were all just holed up at home. And then, you know, I kind of held my breath when the school year started. And sure enough, we actually lost teachers. We lost 3 at my site, which I usually have a wait list at my school site because of the shortage of students. We have over 200 students that didn't show up that were registered. Some of them we did find out left to the virtual school academy, but some just have not checked into any school at all. They're just not at school, and many have moved. So when we've tried to go do home visits, they're not there. Yeah, so definitely a decline there. People are afraid, they don't want to send their students to the bus stop, and in some cases students who are citizens are working for their families because their families are afraid to work.
Okay, seeing as there's no more questions.
Mariluz has her
Mariluz?
hand up. Yeah.
Okay. Mariluz.
Hola Lupe, un
Hola.
hermoso saludo solidario, un abrazo desde acá, desde México. Mi pregunta tiene más bien que ver sobre la posibilidad de que en una movilización que tuvieran allá, creo que hubiera sido muy importante en el Día Sin Reyes, pero puede ser en otro momento, se pudiera tal vez buscar que un compañero o compañera de México y uno de Canadá, o una, pudieran ir a la movilización que ustedes tuvieran en Los Ángeles y ser como una brigada, digámoslo así, una comisión solidaria.
Yeah.
Y creo que eso sería importante. En algún momento durante una de las huelgas de Chicago coincidió que estábamos allá en Chicago por un evento de Labor Nuts y un profesor de la CENTE, el maestro Francisco Bravo, en la marcha, y fuimos como 5 mexicanos que estábamos ahí, mexicanas, y él habló en el meeting de ese paro de los maestros de CTU. Entonces, eso sería tal vez un elemento y aprovechar para que esa comisión chiquita pudiera dar una plática con maestros de allá explicando lo que se hace en pedagogías alternativas o algo así. La pregunta es si esto valdría la pena intentarlo y si a ustedes les es útil.
Yes, no, that would be amazing. And that would be something that we could definitely coordinate. We could have an organized way to bring in a delegation to march with us. But I think even more importantly would be to do like an intercambio with our UTLA educators. You know, we have a lot of our membership in the Human Rights Committee, also on the Raza Ed Committee, and then of course educators who are not from United Teachers Los Angeles, but are in the area that are members of the Association of Raza Educators. I think that would be fantastic and very well received and respected as well.
Thank you. All right, well, I hope the press conference goes well, and this is just outrageous. It's just never ending. And what's going on in the Bay Area right now is just, but they've got them cornered.
It's horrible.
With that, I'd like to pass over to Diane. And of course, Chicago has been a model of organizing in the United States around getting an incredible mayor who was a teacher, I think still is a member, or was working for CTU. And the kind of organizing that went on with different unions, community groups, Working People's Party has been a model. So I knew that Chicago would be a target under MAGA. And the fight back has been incredible. So with that, I'd like to turn to Diane Castro, the treasurer of CTU. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Rosemary, and thank you everyone on this call. And I would like to begin with just saying thank you for the letters of solidarity, the statements of solidarity that came from this space and from the different locals. Our members were actually able to see and preview some of that just yesterday, and the sentiment in the room as they watched the members, the leaders from BCTF, and see the letters from this coalition really was energized, and it was much needed. So thank you. So much of what Lupe just shared is also being seen in Chicago. In fact, because it happened in LA, we were able to coordinate and speak to the labor leaders out in UTLA. We also spoke to some of the people from DC to hear about the situation there. And one thing that we noticed was a pattern that grew where cities that had strong Black leadership were really under attack. So, yes, Rosemary, there is something to the organizing that's happened in Chicago. And there's also a pattern that we're noticing where they're using the racist dog whistle of attacking cities with high crime and violence as their way in to target the immigrant community, the migrant community. And so we took a lot of opportunity to make sure, just like Lupe shared, that we were informing our members not only of their rights, but making sure that our communities know how to know their rights and also defend their rights. We want our members to know their risks because they are, and I would like to say indiscriminately targeting neighborhoods, but it's actually pretty discriminatory. The Supreme Court gave these federal agents the permission to target anyone who looks Latino, anyone who sounds like they speak another language, and anyone who seems like they work a low income job. That could be just about any person on a weekend. It could be just any person moving from space to space. The impact that we're seeing in our schools is that these agents are driving through communities. They were setting up staging areas in school parking lots before the school day would begin. And it was really a sense of intimidation. They're no longer allowed to do that. That goes to say our mayor is a former member and has been very vocal and courageous in his advocacy for our city. We have seen schools where during the school day, ICE agents have thrown tear gas in front of the schools, and members have been hit. They were wonderful at mobilizing and really getting the community involved to speak against what happened outside of the school. We also had neighbors kidnapped, because that is what these are, political kidnappings, nearby schools, and family members being disappeared. And our members have really taken leadership in calling for press conferences, in asking for this become visible to the community, that we have draw media attention, because we really are making sure everyone is aware this is not normal. A sitting president should not be targeting their citizens. Just today, there were 4 students on their way to their high school, 4 16-year-olds, and on their way, they saw a security guard following his constitutional rights and requesting a warrant signed by a federal judge for the ICE agents to enter the little shopping center. And for doing his job, the ICE agents arrested him, and these students did what I think most people are doing, and they began to defend their rights and defend the security guard's rights. One student, these are children, one student was injured to the point where he was bleeding, and another child was arrested. These were US citizens. Now, I'm pleased to say that the child has been released and is in the care of his parent. And these were children who did the thing that took the courage to stand up to defend the rights, our constitutional rights, and were targeted for their advocacy. So we're seeing this targeting at around schools, but not in the schools. And the reason for that is because we won contractual language. Our city is a sanctuary city. And we made sure to win contractual language under the first Trump presidency, making sure that we had sanctuary schools. No ICE agent is allowed into a school building. They must have a signed warrant by a federal judge. And right now, these federal agents are not acting within the law. We have a mayor that came from our ranks. He was a former teacher, a former organizer, and currently a member on leave. And he has been very vocal, not only in saying ICE out of Chicago, hands off Chicago, but he has made sure to have pass resolutions saying these agents should be wearing body cams. They should not wear face masks. They must identify themselves. They are not allowed into private businesses. He recently started passing out signs. We actually have them at our union hall saying that these private locations cannot be used for ICE staging. And I think that because of that, we have really been able to continue to pass this message of solidarity. We have been in the communities. Our members have been engaged in sidewalk solidarity. And so every community, Black, Latina, it does not matter, has been given the materials to let the community know of what their rights are. So we are not just targeting our families, we're making sure the neighbors know what their rights are. Many of our members are part of rapid response teams because they want to know. They want to know what their rights are, what's happening in their communities, because they want to be able to mobilize. There has been a lot of interest in walking school buses. And I'll say, while the district did say that they recommend walking school buses, they did not really do much in creating a protocol or procedure around it. And we're seeing, regardless, these satellites, these schools that are just taking up with their community, taking up with the families, and creating walking school buses. And it's something that we hope to be able to provide every school a template for how to set this up at their school. One such school already said that they had 40 students and so many volunteers that they had to create a worksheet of a sign-up worksheet of when the volunteers could take the students, because the need was there and the community has really stepped up to defend the students and to protect our students. We're also hearing where schools are now engaging in mutual aid. Unfortunately, because of this the lack of rhyme or reason of where ICE is showing up, our families are pretty scared to go to the grocery store. Trump has passed legislation in his big ugly bill that will limit SNAP benefits, which are the supplemental nutritional assistance program. And though because of our government shutdown, those SNAP benefits will be cut in November, right around the holiday season. So families already, regardless of their status, because SNAP benefits go to our citizens, regardless of their status, are being affected, and there's a lack of resources. And so we're seeing members create food pantries for their families. I am really encouraged and proud of the leadership of our members and how they've stood up to the moment and really just come together to provide community and coalition for these families. Because of our collaboration with community organizations like the Illinois Center for Immigrant Refugees, ICER, we have been able to also provide training, know your rights trainings to our members. There is a lot of interest. There's been interest across the state, not only in Chicago, in order to know what they can do, how they can support families. And so our members are taking these trainings, they're sharing it, they're creating sanctuary teams, they're creating safety teams. Not too long ago, a Black Hawk helicopter landed on top of an apartment building at 1 o'clock in the morning. And from 1 to 3 in the morning, they conducted a raid within the apartment building. They lined up, and now this is in a community that is a predominantly Black neighborhood. And they lined up the families. They created 2 lines, one for Black families or for Black people and one for seemingly Latina people. And these were families. These were children who were zip tied and treated like criminals. And because of that, we have really made sure to target every single community. We could not just say that this was a migrant issue or a Latina issue, because we also know that we have Black migrants, we have Asian migrants, we have European migrants. So we wanted to make sure that every community was aware of their rights, because this administration has been very targeted about going after anyone that they deem does not fit their view of what the United States should look like. And the Trump administration is very obvious and apparent about their racist and xenophobic messaging. And so we want to make sure that there is Black and brown unity, because that is what's really needed in this moment, especially what we're seeing in our city. We have seen families come out and say, how can we support our non-documented siblings, our non-documented neighbors? And so we really worked closely with the schools and with the district, to the extent that we've been able to collaborate, to determine how we can get resources out to these schools, how we can inform the schools of their rights and protect our students to the best ability. Some educators are posting their lessons online, just like they did with COVID, because families are scared to come to school. We do not currently have a remote learning option, although it's something that we are pressing our district on to provide the option to families. Our district does offer a virtual academy for medically fragile students. And so we are asking our district to explore all the options possible so that our families continue to attend school. We know that school is the safest place, and we cannot provide safe passage at every neighborhood because of cuts and lack of funding. And so safe passages are not always in every school community. And so what we just saw today with those 4 students being targeted, we know that we need options for our families. As far as attendance is concerned, it's really varied from school to school and from neighborhood to neighborhood. Obviously, schools that are more Latine have dealt with dips in attendance. I'll speak on my own former school, where the monolingual students are still coming, and yet the bilingual students are it's the bilingual attendance that has really dipped. And so there's been a variance across the district with attendance. I think that our collaboration with other organizations, seeing the way that our educators have asked for know your rights trainings. We also had training on non-cooperation so that our members were aware of how to peacefully protest. We had over 300,000 people come out for No King's Day just this past Saturday in Chicago alone. If you count the response in the Chicagoland area, we had almost 500,000 people come out. It was really just a big demonstration of solidarity, saying ICE out of Chicago, occupation out of Chicago. Members are walking around with whistles so that they can alert the community when ICE is present. They are walking children to bus stops to make sure that they're getting on the bus. So it's really been a phenomenal response across the district. And yet we still know that we need more. We need more from our district, and we need more from our state legislators to make sure that our students and families are safe. We are hopeful that we can continue to provide a model education to our students. We lean a lot on our history. We lean a lot on the fact that Chicago has historically disinvested. They've historically not provided resources to our students. And so to a certain extent, a muscle has been developed to meet this moment because of the disinvestment, especially in Black communities. And so learning from that, we are now also trying to determine what do we need for our future so that we don't return to this moment. It's not enough to say ICE out of Chicago. We also have to say, what do we need for a better tomorrow? Because what we were doing in the past was not sufficient. It's what led to this moment. And so we now have to also consider, what steps do we need to take in the future so that the pendulum does not swing back towards hatred, but that it remains in the realm of a hopeful future, a future that invests in our children and provides safety to all of our citizens and all of our students. And so we are asking this space to also consider May 1st of the upcoming year. I know that in the international space, May 1st has always been a big day for demonstration and support, and we're starting to build that up more within Chicago and within the United States. We have signed on with our contract a May 1st, 2028 expiration date to be in alignment with other labor unions within our state and throughout the country. And we're also just trying to look in short term because 2028 is several years away. Looking in the short term, what sort of mobilization we need to have so that May Day or May 1st of 2026 is even larger than what we saw this past Saturday. Again, we are really looking towards the future while trying to handle what's happening in our current lifetime or our current day-to-day time. And so that is where I'll pause and take any questions if there's any.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's just amazing what we're facing here and the way people are really stepping up and organizing. And I could certainly add for LA, we have 800,000 workers represented in our County Federation of Labor, and we are doing huge food drives, and the food banks are being set up all over the city. And we did a training nonviolent resistance with 1,200 people that came through our unions, UTLA, the County Federation of Labor, and other unions. But we've got a long way to go, and the solidarity really, really is important to us. And we know that these fascistic elements link up with our people, not our people, the elected people that are pushing this Project 2025, and it goes way beyond Trump. And so lessons we can learn, and the way we see young people, the Zoomers, really stepping up in other countries like Peru and Nepal. And we're just really looking to the future as we keep having these. This last King's Day, we had 7 million people out nationally. They're not talking about reform. They're talking about what kind of future do we want for our children and for ourselves. They're looking to, as Diane said, towards the future. So I'm sure you have a lot of questions for Diane. And let me see, I don't see any hands raised, but. Questions?
Sorry, I have a question again. Just Diane, I was wondering if you could sort of walk us through, because I remember you mentioned this in an earlier meeting, of sort of what are the protocols that the union and the school district have when there's an ICE operation happening outside or near a school. Like what are the sort of protocols and what are the protections that the union has negotiated around those issues?
I would like to say that there was a actual protocol that the district stands firmly to, but because we have a difference in opinion of what should be happening. So the district says, should an ICE operation be happening near a school, again, do not allow ICE agents into the building unless they have a signed warrant by by a federal judge. They do not disclose a student's legal status. And that's kind of it. They're starting to come around with protocols for transportation, should they be on their way to a field trip. They're starting to come around with protocols for sporting events and for field trips. What we are recommending and what certain schools have done is to go on a soft lockdown. So that means no one in or out of the building, although they can move freely within the building. If the children are outside on recess, we are recommending that they go inside, because no children should view their neighbors being targeted or attacked and wonder if they're next. And that is something that the children already are saying. And so we are recommending protocols for a walking school bus because the district recommended a walking school bus but did not give policy. We are recommending, the option, should there be a need for it, for remote learning. We are saying, if the children are on a school bus, that the driver should not be opening the doors. These are not typical times. They're not showing warrants. They're not responding the way that you would expect, any sort of police to respond with a warrant or with even reason. They're responding with violence. Actually, they're responding with intimidation. They're throwing tear gas. They've been ordered not to do it, and they are not listening to orders. And so, our recommendations are soft lockdown, notifying the principal, and this is a district policy also, the principal should reach out to the Office of Student Safety Protections, and the delegate should be reaching out to their organizer and their field rep, and we should be connecting with the rapid response teams in the area. We finally, and yes, as Linda said in the comments, we finally got the district to agree that every school should have a sanctuary team. So the district has been much slower in responding to our demands, and yet they're slowly getting there. And so we are now working with what does that look like and how do we get sanctuary teams in every school. Not every school has one, and we really want to make sure that these safety teams are at every school, and that they follow the protocol, that the principal be on there, a security guard, the school clerk, and at minimum, the school delegate or an educator member be part of that team. We don't want to create chaos. We do not want to create fear within the families, but we do want to have a safety protocol.
Rosemary, yo tengo una pregunta.
Muy bien. So, Mariluz.
Sí, muy breve. Diane, algo que en este momento me apareció como duda es del personal que trabaja en las escuelas, ¿alguno es indocumentado? ¿Están sujetos a posibilidades también de persecución o no? O sea, no me queda claro porque hemos hablado mucho principalmente de los niños, de los papás de los niños, de las comunidades, pero también hay compañeros, compañeras, trabajadores de la educación que están sujetos a persecución.
Thank you, Mariluz, for that question. So as a policy, the district is not allowed to ask for legal status. And we do have educators that we know have DACA or the Dreamers Act. We also know that we have educators who've come in from the Philippines, from Latin America on visas. And so there is a fear with it amongst our educators, whether or not they would be targeted. Yes, as Lupe says, DACA-mented teachers. And so there is fear that they may be next, because even visa holders, green card holders are being targeted and detained. And so another thing that we are very proud of is the fact that we won in our contract 10 days that our members can use for immigration-related business. So we really made sure through our collective bargaining agreement to have language in there to protect our students and our educators. And so, yes, we do have members who are at risk. We have members who are fearful and concerned, and we want to make sure that in their advocacy, and I'll again speak on my former school, we had a teacher who was fearful of being outside to do the sidewalk solidarity campaign, but she still wants to be involved. And so she's taken on more of a coordinating role within the school building. She's done a lot of care within the school. She's not outside on the sidewalk. We want to make sure our members are safe. And so we've reminded them if they're witness to a kidnapping, that they are recording, that they're not posting on social media, that they're recording at a safe distance, because these ICE agents are very violent. And those who feel unsafe, that they remain within the building, that they remain inside, and they remain out of harm's way.
I don't see Lupe on, but I can say in Los Angeles, we work very closely with SCIU, with a service workers union, Local 99 in our schools, and we have people with undocumented status.
Lupe is still on if perhaps
Oh.
she wants to add.
Yeah, is it the question around the
Staff.
staff and others feeling fearful in addition to students?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, everything I think that was already said is the case. I mean, there are people who have DACA, and there are many people that, you know, quote unquote, did it the right way. And they're, you know, they're afraid right now because, you know, the racial profiling, it's impossible to tell who is documented and who's undocumented. You know what I'm saying? Like my son looks like some of the boys that have been detained. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we have teachers. I know we have campus aides that have, you know, work visas, and they feel like they're on a thin line where if they were to be detained, that they're fearful of like deportation. Whereas maybe like, you know, a year ago, they felt completely secure. They were in the process, you know, they were doing things that they needed to do to put themselves in a safer situation. And now that isn't being respected anymore.
Lupe, could you also speak to what we have done in terms of if children's parents get picked up?
Yes, sorry. We have, and it's also through our more of our union spaces, more so than our district. We're organizing so that our parents have the documentations to have everything in line in the event that they're separated, so that the kids, sorry, are left with trusted adults, and then that they have their paperwork in order. I actually have a coworker right now who is caring for a 1.5-year-old, he and his wife, that was separated from her mom in El Salvador. So they had everything in order, like the notarized document, to be able to care for the little girl and to be able to travel to El Salvador with her and return her to her parent, to her mom. That is something that unfortunately, you know, we all have to start planning for, that type of separation, because something that's already tragic could have been even more tragic, because no one has the permission to take you know, a US citizen out of the country without permission from the parent. And when the parent is separated, how do you do that? So these are things that we're organizing people to do in advance. And myself as an organizer, you know, I am a US citizen. I was born in New Mexico. I'm even getting that similar type of paperwork prepared, because they are targeting people who are organizers. And so that's something that I've had to talk to my family about. Like, in the event that something happens to me, you know, these are the things that we have in order.
Thank you. More questions?
Rosemary, I don't know if
tienes
you can
dos
see the
manos.
hands up, but there's Rafael Flores and Angel Custodio. I think Rafael was the first one to raise his hand.
Bien, Rafael.
Gracias, buenas tardes. Rafael Flores del SUTIEMS de la Ciudad de México. Y quisiera preguntar si hay algún tipo de seguimiento para los estudiantes que han sido afectados por detenciones de ellos o de sus familiares, si sabemos qué impacto está teniendo en estos casos más extremos.
I can speak to that a little bit.
Thank you, Diane.
Yes, there's follow-up, but this is a situation where we need, and I think this answers the question that was asked to me earlier. It really needs all of us in solidarity together to help ease when these things are happening to families. So like in the case of, we have at a school where a student from Guatemala and her mother was detained at a immigration check-in. Within 24 hours, they ended up in Guatemala, and the mom had medical conditions. She ended up unfortunately passing about 2.5 months after she was deported. So now one of our students, who's supposed to be a senior, is over in Guatemala with family, but family that she's never really known. And so we do have, networks here of teachers and friends that are raising funds every month to send her, and that are staying in contact with her, and also, having an immigration attorney working on her case. So the thing about what is happening here in California, or in the United States in general, is we're being constantly bombarded. As you can see, what is happening in Chicago, what's happening here. It's like once you are able to go in and provide support here, there's 3-4 other things happening elsewhere. So this is literally going to have to be all of us who understand ethically how awful this is, to be in solidarity together. That's the only way we're going to survive this. And it is literally the only way that I actually am able to go to bed at night, because I know that, like, for instance, here in LA, our Community Self-Defense Coalition and the other coalitions that exist, because if that didn't exist, when each individual of us or each organization is exhausted, I can go to sleep knowing that there's others out there doing it too. And I think that's going to have to be how we're all going to be thinking about surviving this, is all of us in solidarity together.
I will say that in Chicago, another contract win that we just recently secured, and we also won in 2019, and we continue to expand upon, is the expansion of social workers in every school, counselors in every school, making sure that our students are receiving those additional services, those additional touch points, and our educators on their own. They have been holding circles with their students and just asking them how they are. And some of the students are processing kind of typically, and just like we've heard it on the news, and some of those children have really need that space. And so the children are being very cared for because our educators are incredible. They're just so thoughtful at making sure that they have that social emotional connection with them and with their counselors and the social workers. In addition, we've made sure to touch base with the district, collaborate to make sure that our educators are also being provided the opportunity for additional counseling. Because in the end, just today, like I said, those 4 students who were targeted, I spoke to the members there today, and they all said, we're going to go home and cry. They were so brave. They were so strong. And they said they were going to go home and cry so that they can get up tomorrow and teach again. How they stood together, even though they knew early this morning what had happened to their student, is really remarkable. And we made sure to continue to speak to our district to make sure that they're also being tended, they're also being looked after, because as I said at the beginning, this is not normal. The trauma that the Trump administration is inflicting on their citizens is inhumane and based on a white nationalist mentality.
Rosemary, you have Angel is the next person with his hand
I
up.
think I see if there are any other hands. I know there was a Red SEPA conference that dealt with higher education, but Cal State Los Angeles has virtual classes for their students as well, because that's a large Black-brown campus. And-
Rosemary, you have Angel with his hand up.
Oh, who? I can't
Angel
see
Custodio.
hands for some reason. Okay,
Eh,
on.
Gracias, Rosemary. Buenas tardes. Acabamos de ver una serie de manifestaciones en Estados Unidos por este día de No Kings y de pronto pareciera que hay una oposición muy amplia a las políticas de Trump, pero parece que eso no basta. ¿O estoy interpretando de una manera errónea? ¿Ustedes tienen esperanza de que de que en general la sociedad norteamericana logre tirar esa forma de gobierno del presidente actual?
Diane, did you want to speak to that?
I can speak to it. With every manifestation, every protest, we see more and more people coming out. We're seeing the movement grow. I think that in the beginning, there was a hope that he was all talk and very little action. Our union took the time to read Project 2025 and to understand that the MAGA offensive, it's not just Donald Trump. This is a movement, right? And it's not just, you know, MAGA, it's the Proud Boys, it's the Oath Keepers, it is Moms for Liberty, it is Turning Point USA. So we took time to really study this document and understand what was growing. And every time there's a manifestation, it's grown larger because I think that the US populace is really understanding that we are in more than an authoritarian regime, we are in a fascist state. And we have a mayor who just called for a general strike. Now, whether or not or what that looks like is a whole different conversation. And yet we're starting to hear legislators and politicians come together, local leaders who are standing side by side. When I speak of coalition, it's not just with community, it is with our local leaders who are really standing up. We need to see more of that energy from state leaders, and we need to see more from our national leaders. The people are standing together. And so if I don't lead in hope, if I don't lead with an eye to the future, then I would be doing a disservice to the members who are part of the 30,000 of the CTU and the population of Chicago, right? And so we have to have hope that this too shall pass. And like I said, when we study history, we know that we have survived this. We know that because we have survived segregation, we have survived slavery, we have survived militarization in Puerto Rico, we have survived the militarization of police against the Black community. And as I said, it's a pendulum. We want to make sure that there is no swing right, that there is no swing into a fascist state post the Trump regime. Now, what that looks like, we have to build, and we're going to have to build that together.
Thank you. Steve, do you see any other hands up? For some reason, I don't see them.
No, but there are a couple questions in the chat. Perhaps I can read them. The first question is No, I've lost it.
Mm,
Oh well. I've got this one from Sara Hernandez that says, is there any conversation for the states that are being targeted to threaten to not pay federal taxes? Is that a viable option? So I guess is that a viable fight back option for states such as California and Illinois that have been targeted by occupation by federal forces? And thank you, El Sanchez, for clarifying the other question.
I can begin. I'm not sure if Lupe is still available. And El Sanchez, I did see your question regarding the courts. And so I don't want to do a disservice to you. Regarding the recommendations for what families should do when they go to the courts. I know there are options sometimes for, I believe, virtual court appointments. But from what I know, and that I was hesitant to answer because my knowledge there is pretty limited. But from what I do know, that's not always an option. In immigration cases, um, people are expected to arrive at the courts. However, I will say that a judge ruled that ICE could not conduct their operations outside of the courts. And so we're seeing the law, right, do right by people. What we're also seeing is the federal government not caring. We're seeing these agents not caring about what's being passed through the courts. And then regarding the question around taxes, we're very much aware that Illinois is a donor state. We're also very much aware that Chicago is a donor city. We are aware, and where the conversation goes from there will have to come collectively. Our union is always very democratic, and we know that these are larger conversations. And when I spoke about our state legislators needing to do more, this is part of that more. Our governor has been excellent in front of the media and has been excellent in his outcry against Trump. And we're appreciative of that. And we still need him to do more to meet this moment. And so, for example, the state police have been helping the ICE agents outside of the Broadview Immigrant Detention Center. That's a move there. Our governor could call the state police and tell them to stand down and not cooperate with ICE. And so there's things that we still need from our state legislators that I think need to be in consideration before we talk about something like withholding taxes. Not to say that it's an idea that shouldn't be explored. I'm just saying it's an idea that has to come within reason because our governor and our state legislators are still lacking the movement that we need from them.
Mhm.
And
Any other
Rosemary,
questions?
there is a question from Rosario.
Okay. Ah, Rosario, ándale. Rosario.
Y
Rosario, ya.
hablando, me inquieta mucho sí, sí, tengo mi micrófono activado. ¿Sí me escuchan?
Sí.
Sí, sí, me inquieta mucho em, los ejemplos que han puesto sobre los efectos que tienen las detenciones de ICE. eh, Incluso ciudadanos y que, bueno, tienen una apariencia latinoamericana con relación a los riesgos, el riesgo en que colocan a los niños. Eh, Quisiera preguntar si aparte de lo que ustedes realizan como sindicato, ¿hay alguna organización nacional o internacional como UNICEF que esté visibilizando de manera notoria, pues ahora sí que el efecto tan arbitrario que generan en los niños cuando suceden las situaciones de que separan a la madre o al padre de los niños que pudieran, bueno, sí hay estas organizaciones que estén visibilizando de manera más amplia y que con un mayor alcance, lo cual, bueno, me parecería que implicaría la generación de una, pues no sé, una acción más contundente de protección a los infantes, porque pues ponen en peligro, ¿no? Su presente y su futuro. Esa es mi pregunta y la propuesta, ¿no? De pues qué más no podría hacerse al interior del país y desde qué manera en la idea de ustedes que sea efectiva podemos auxiliar con una campaña, con una, pues no sé, una demanda, un planteamiento a la Embajada de Estados Unidos o alguna otra instancia. Eso es lo que yo querría plantear. Gracias.
Thank you for your question, Rosario. As far as UNICEF and other organizations outside of the United States, I have not really heard much on an international level, whether or not, you know, if they are deciding to do something for the children. I do know that thanks to you all and thanks to some of the social media that I've had access to, is that eyes are on the United States. So we know that other countries are seeing what's happening here and they note the rise in fascism here. As far as what you all can do, I know that we had spoken about with Steve and I believe Mariluz, Andre, about sending letters to the embassy. I know we had these conversations, and so at this point, I think all of those ideas are wonderful examples of solidarity for the people of the United States.
And we have Mariluz, Rosemary, who has her hand up.
Yes.
Bueno, pensando en esto que está planteando Rosario, el CTU pertenece a un sindicato nacional en Estados Unidos, American Federation Teachers, me parece. Y creo que ellos son parte de la Internacional de la Educación Mundial, hasta donde yo sé. No sé si estoy equivocada. Y podrían tal vez, a través de la Federación Americana de Profesores, hacer esa demanda o ese necesario cuidado en los dos sentidos, tanto para los niños, las niñas, como para los trabajadores de la educación, por lo que dijo la compañera Lupe y lo que tú misma has planteado, Diane, porque también hay que proteger a los profesores y las profesoras que están siendo atacados. Entonces, bueno, esa es una idea que me surge de lo de Rosario, pero yo lo que a lo que quería referirme es al comentario o la pregunta o la preocupación de Ángel. Yo pienso que vamos a derrotar a Trump y me incluyo. Yo no sé si va a terminar su periodo. Creo que hasta hace unos cuantos meses no se imaginaba nadie que iban a salir 7 millones de estadounidenses a marchar en tantas ciudades como lo que pasó el fin de semana anterior. Para mí eso es muy alentador. ¿Cuánto nos vamos a tardar? No lo sé. No sé si lo vamos, o sea, lo vamos a detener, vamos a frenar, porque la ultraderecha la estamos frenando a nivel mundial. Ahí está Milei en Argentina. Yo espero que ganen los compañeros de Argentina las votaciones el próximo domingo, creo que es el próximo domingo, y que no le dé Trump el apoyo financiero a Milei. Pero también hay protestas en Ecuador, las que están, por supuesto, en Estados Unidos, y ya han frenado a la ultraderecha en otros lados. En Bolivia perdió el Evo, pero no ganó la ultraderecha. Sé que es centro derecha, pero no la ultraderecha. Entonces yo creo que estamos frenando, que todos y todas, con lo poquito que hacemos, con nuestro granito de arena, estamos lográndolo. Y yo creo que nos tardamos 2 años, todos y todas, en frenar la ofensiva de Israel contra Gaza y el genocidio. No se ha parado totalmente, pero hoy en día podemos decir que se detuvo mínimamente y que ahí hay una posibilidad de relanzamiento. No es lo mismo la defensa de Palestina hace un año a lo que hoy tenemos. Ha habido millones de personas en el mundo que hemos estado protestando. Y en todos los lugares, nadie imaginaba tampoco que tuviéramos que frenar en otros ámbitos también esta ofensiva de la ultraderecha. Bueno, perdón, no era una pregunta, pero es que me parece que es algo muy importante que tenemos todos y todas que asumir, que convencernos a nosotros mismos y hacer lo poquito que podamos, pero hacerlo, no quedarnos con los brazos cruzados.
Thank you, Mariluz. I think
And El Sanchez has her hand up.
Hi,
so-
everyone. My question is a little bit of a specific, and I understand if you may not have the answer. I think it's just my brain. I'm thinking right now as I'm listening to all this. I am a current military member, so I know that there are no exceptions right now for military members either, in terms of the ICE deportations. And I've had a few counselings already of military members that their parents are facing deportation or they themselves don't have any paperwork. So I think it also becomes complicated when we have to be apolitical, right? We cannot have a yay or nay, a biased opinion, I should say. So is there anything that I guess that we can do for even military parents, or is there any guidance or mentorship or anything that you can provide regarding military members that could potentially be in a situation like that? Thank you.
I have never served, and I thank you for your service. I have family members who have served, and so I would be remiss in advising. The only thing that I can implore is that you do remember your oath, because that's what's needed right now. Your continued bravery. And this is an unenviable position that you are now in. We appreciate and honor our warriors. We don't appreciate the war. And like I said, I don't have an answer having never served, and it would be irresponsible of me to give advice in that aspect. The only thing that I can say as a citizen is that we ask that you all remember your oath and to whom that oath is. Thank you, and I'm sorry that I don't have more.
No, thank you. I completely understand, and that's the only thing that we can do. That's our first oath, which is to protect the Constitution. But yeah, it does become difficult, and it does become difficult when I have young students that are 20, 18-year-old kids that just enlisted, and they're coming into my office asking questions. But yes, thank you, anywho. Thank you so much.
I think the idea of the Know Your Rights campaign that we have, and the fact that we've made that campaign inclusive of everyone, regardless of their legal status, it's for everyone. That has been one of the best things that we have been able to do for our community. And so we do have that information online. I can drop it in the chat. But knowing the constitutional rights, I think, is the best thing that we can do. And it's not just the First Amendment right. It is that right to remain silent. It is the legal rights that one has. And so I'll drop that information because that may be of use. Although you would have to determine how to apply it for yourself and your members.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Diane. I could add, we did have a case in Los Angeles of a father that was threatened with deportation, and both of his sons were Marines, and he had even served, and that got resolved. Loopy could probably give you information on that. But that's all of our fight right now, is to defend the Constitution and our rights and those of people who live in the United States. So Steve, anything else? Ideas for, we will have this video available. And
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I don't see any other hands up, so maybe we can move to just some concluding remarks from Diane and you. But we are, it's, I've mentioned in the chat, we are live streaming the webinar in Spanish on the Trinational Coalition, Coalición Trinacional, the Mexican section, and in English on the Canadian sections Facebook. I'll repost the links. And we are recording the French interpretation. We're not live streaming it, but we will be posting it later in our umbrella organization, the Idea Network's YouTube channel. So there'll be various options where you can access these. And, you know, if you thought this was a useful workshop, please do share the links with your colleagues.
will you be able to post that on our US website, Facebook group?
I think I can share it. Unfortunately, they changed the thing with Facebook about 2 years ago where you can't live stream directly onto a group. But I think I can share it to that.
Or send me the link and I can put it on.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Well, it's always an honor to be here with our trinational members and friends, because the internationalism is just so vital. That this is just goes beyond the United States, just like with Gaza and Palestine. It's a worldwide struggle, and we're seeing really young, you know, the Zoomers really picking it up in all kinds of different countries. And a lot of them were born in, if they were born after 9/11, they've been born into a crisis, especially in this country, you know, in other countries. So it's, and they're worried about the environment, and they're reaching out, and we're educating them. And that's our job, is preparing the future as educators. That's where we put in our little grain of sand. So thank you, Steve. Or Marty Luce, any last words from the Trinational Coordinating Committee?
I thought maybe Diane might want to make a few concluding remarks particularly around what kind of other international solidarity might be useful coming from, well, both the Canadian US teachers organization, or Canadian and Mexican, but also colleagues in other parts of the US that may not yet be under attack.
Thank you, Steve. I just want to reinforce the necessity for reviewing history. We consider the moment that we're in, we have to acknowledge that we've been in some iteration of this in the past. And it's forced us to develop the muscle that we currently have to confront these attacks. Understanding our past helps us design our future. We know that it's not only the only necessity to meet this moment, we also acknowledge that there's a need for continued growth and collaboration across locals. It's not enough for it to be CTU and UTLA. It's not enough for it to be the educators of Baltimore and Portland. We need every educator, every labor union to unite across this country. And we ask our international labor leaders continue that solidarity, continue the support. It really helped our members to know that we are not alone. Continue writing letters. Those letters mean a lot. Continue to mobilize on our behalf and raise awareness, because I had not thought of UNICEF, as Rosario spoke on earlier. While we know authoritarianism isn't new to Chicago, the advanced cruelty of this administration calls for us to strengthen our coalition across this country and internationally. So I spoke on May Day once before. I would love to see a broader coalition of May Day for May 1st. I would love to know that globally we are outside, we are on the streets for labor rights, and that within our country that we build a movement unlike any other seen before. The time for labor coalition and labor unification is now more than ever before. And so that's our call here from the CTU.
Any more comments? I think that's the key message.
No estamos en presencial, pero ¡bravo! Y unidos y organizados venceremos.
Yeah. And we have a trinational conference coming up in Ontario in 2026. Well, thank you, everybody. It's just like going out with 7 million people this past weekend. Just being with you it lifts us up. It really lifts us up. So with that, Steve, do you want to close us out?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Thank you again, like Rosemary said, and particularly thank you to Diane and Lupe for sharing these experiences and strategies. I'm hoping those kind of learnings will also be useful to teachers organizations in other parts of the United States that may soon face such threats. As Rosemary said, the ICE has arrived in Oakland now. And just a quick plug for the Trinational Coalition in Defense of Public Education. We've been around since the beginning of NAFTA in 1994, doing mutual support. A lot of the support in the past have been Mexican and US organizations supporting Canadian teachers unions in the beginning of this century, and US and Canadian unions supporting the Mexicans during the third wave of neoliberalism in this 2013 to 2018 period. And now I think it's important for our sections from Mexico and Canada to really rally and support our siblings in the US who are constantly impressing us with their creativity and resilience. So thank you, everyone, and particularly thank you, teachers of LA, teachers of Chicago.
Thank you. All right.
And thank you to our interpreters, Meli and Marta, who, as always, shine with their excellent interpretation.
Thank you to this space for having us.
Yes. Thank you so much. It really lifts us all up. Bye.